They sat by the rusted bench near the bus stop, knees hugged to their chests, sharing a single blanket that had more holes than warmth. Rain had just ended, but the cold still wrapped itself around the streets like a ghost that refused to leave. People passed them every few minutes, heads down, earbuds in, coffee cups steaming, but none stopped. Not even a glance. It was as if 11-year-old JC and her 7-year-old brother Cody didn't exist. They hadn't eaten in nearly 2 days. JC looked older than her years, but only because of the sharpness in her eyes and the quiet panic she had learned to hide. Cody, on the other hand, was still soft around the cheeks, with a voice that trembled when he asked questions like, "Are we going to eat today?" or, "Do you think Mom's coming back this time?" She never had answers. Only silence. The last shelter they went to had turned them away. Too full, they said, though JC could see the unease in the woman's eyes. She knew what it was. 2 kids alone was a red flag. Questions. Paperwork. Maybe even separation. So they stayed out of sight, wandering through back alleys and empty construction sites, sleeping wherever the wind couldn't find them. It was in that broken routine of hunger and invisibility that he appeared. A pair of worn leather boots stepped into their view first. Then a voice, deep and calm, said, "You two all right?" JC froze. Strangers never spoke. And when they did, it usually wasn't kind. She pulled Cody closer. The man crouched down slowly, like he didn't want to scare them. He wore a gray hoodie under a faded army coat, a backpack slung across one shoulder. His skin was dark and weathered, but his eyes were warm, the kind of warm that didn't feel fake. Like maybe he'd been where they were. "Name's Malachi," he said gently. "I was just over there, getting a sandwich. Thought maybe you two could use one." Cody's eyes darted to the brown paper bag in the man's hand. JC didn't speak, but her stomach twisted hard enough to make her lean forward involuntarily. Malachi noticed. "Here," he said, setting the bag down a few feet away. "I'm gonna leave it right there, all right? No strings. Just food." Then, he stood, gave them a small nod, and walked away. It wasn't until he was out of sight that JC lunged forward and tore open the bag. Inside were 2 turkey sandwiches, a bottle of water, and an apple. They devoured it in silence. Cody cried while he ate. That night, they slept in the back of a laundromat. The owner usually left the side door unlocked, and if they were quiet, no one noticed. JC curled her body around Cody like she always did, but sleep didn't come easy. She kept thinking about Malachi, not just the food, but the way he looked at them. Like they mattered. The next morning, he was there again. Same bench. Same quiet presence. This time he had 2 breakfast burritos in hand. "You hungry?" he asked. JC hesitated, then nodded. That morning was different. They ate while he sat on the edge of the bench, not too close, not prying. Cody asked if he had more apples. Malachi laughed and promised he'd bring extra next time. And there was a next time. Every morning for the next week, he came back. Never empty-handed. Some days it was food. Other days, a pair of gloves or socks. Once, he brought a beat-up coloring book and a set of crayons for Cody. JC watched him carefully. She didn't trust easily. But he never asked personal questions. Never tried to take pictures. Never called anyone. One morning, after he handed them warm egg sandwiches, he finally said, "I used to be homeless too, you know." JC didn't answer, but she glanced up. "Years ago. When I got back from the military," he continued. "Had no family left. No job. Slept under bridges. Folks used to walk past me like I was part of the sidewalk." Cody leaned against him that day without hesitation. Malachi looked surprised, then quietly smiled. "I made it out. Took a while. But someone helped me. One meal. One clean blanket. That's all it took to believe I wasn't invisible. JC finally spoke. We're not supposed to trust people. You're right not to, he said. But sometimes, not everyone's out to hurt you. They didn't see him the next day. Or the day after. JC felt the old panic returning. Cody asked if Malachi had left for good. She didn't know. On the third day, as they sat hungry and silent, she spotted him crossing the street, a limp in his walk and a bandage on his hand. What happened? She asked. Ah, he grinned. Got into a bit of a scrape with a stairwell. I'm clumsy sometimes. Truth was, he'd gotten hurt trying to break up a fight outside his building. But he didn't want them to worry. That afternoon, Malachi did something different. He said, "You two trust me enough to come with me for a few minutes?" JC stiffened. "I ain't taking you far," he added. "Just a block away. I want to show you something." JC looked at Cody, who nodded sleepily. His belly was full for the first time in days. She stood up slowly, hand on her brother's shoulder, and followed Malachi. They stopped in front of a small community center, peeling paint on the walls, but a big, free meals sign in the window. Place runs on volunteers. I help out in the mornings, Malachi said. They don't ask too many questions. You could come eat here. JC narrowed her eyes. You bringing us here so they'll take us away? No, he said simply. I'm showing you a door you can walk through when you're ready. That's all. They didn't go in that day. But she remembered the name. Later that week, the weather turned. Hard rain. Bitter wind. The blanket was no match. Cody got a fever. He was shivering and weak, and JC didn't know what to do. She found Malachi in the usual spot, eyes wide when he saw the boy curled in her arms, flushed and coughing. We need help, she whispered. Please. Malachi didn't hesitate. He picked Cody up, cradling him gently, and led them through back streets to an old building he called home. It wasn't much, just a studio apartment with creaky floors and a heater that barely worked, but it was warm. He made soup. He tucked Cody into his own bed. And JC sat nearby, eyes wide, heart racing, waiting for the catch. But it never came. He never called anyone. Never asked for anything. That night, JC cried for the first time in months. Not because she was scared, but because for once, she wasn't. Cody's fever broke by morning. Malachi had stayed up all night, checking his temperature, wiping his forehead, spooning in sips of broth. JC hadn't slept much either. She sat in a corner of the room, hugging her knees, trying to make sense of it all. The way this stranger had taken them in, no questions, no strings, just kindness. She didn't know what to do with it. When Cody woke up, still pale but smiling, Malachi grinned. Welcome back, little man. Cody whispered, I had a dream about pancakes. Malachi chuckled. I'll see what I can do. He made pancakes. The kind that came from the last of the mix in his cupboard. They were a little burnt, and the syrup was barely a drizzle, but to Cody and JC, they tasted like heaven. As the kids ate, Malachi made a quiet call from the other room, not to the police or child services, but to an old friend who ran the community center. He didn't mention names, just said, I've got 2 little ones here. They need a way forward. He returned to the room and watched them eat in silence. There was something about them that tugged at him deeper than he expected. Maybe it was because he'd once been that kid, cold, scared, waiting for someone to see him. Or maybe it was the way JC guarded her brother like a lioness, even when her own strength was fading. He couldn't save the whole world. But maybe he could do something for theirs. That evening, Malachi sat them down. You can stay here for a few days, he said. Until Cody's fully better. But after that, I think it's time we figure out something a little more stable for you too. JC flinched. Like what? Like a real roof. Real meals. Real beds. Her eyes narrowed. You mean foster care? I mean a place where you're safe. Together. JC didn't trust that. She'd heard promises like that before. Places that took her away from Cody. People who smiled too hard and whispered when they thought she couldn't hear. But Malachi didn't press. He just looked her in the eye and said, whatever happens, I'll be around. I promise. The next day, Malachi took them to the community center. It was a modest building, with bright murals on the walls and the scent of soup wafting from the kitchen. Inside were volunteers serving meals, kids laughing in a small playroom, and a few people resting in corners who looked like they hadn't had kindness in a long time. This place is run by Ms. Darlene, Malachi said. She's tough, but her heart's big. Darlene was a tall woman with silver braids and a voice like thunder. She knelt down in front of Cody and gave him a smile that made his shoulders relax. You're safe here, she told them. That's rule number 1. Over the next week, JC began to soften. She watched as volunteers helped Cody with reading. She let herself laugh once, just once, when he spilled juice all over himself and shouted, I'm a fruit puddle. The other kids joined in, and for a second, they looked like any normal siblings. Malachi still visited daily. Sometimes he brought food, other times he helped Darlene fix broken shelves or leaky pipes. But he always checked on them. Always. One evening, as the sun dipped low, casting gold across the pavement, JC pulled him aside. Why are you doing this? She asked. He sat next to her on the front steps. Because I was lost once, and someone saw me. Same way I saw you. She stared ahead. People don't usually stop. I know. There was a long silence before she whispered, what if? What if we want to stay here? For good. You can, he said. But it'll take time. There's paperwork. Darlene knows people who can help without splitting you up. She's done it before. JC nodded slowly. That night, when Cody fell asleep in his cot, JC stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. She thought about all the nights they'd slept behind dumpsters, in alleys, near train tracks. All the days without food. The people who looked through them. And then she thought about pancakes. About coloring books. About Malachi. The next morning, she asked Darlene, what do we need to do to stay? And so it began. With Malachi and Darlene's help, they began the process. It wasn't easy. There were meetings, interviews, even a court appearance. But Darlene made sure they were never alone. And Malachi sat outside every office, waiting with a bag of snacks and the same quiet strength he always carried. Cody started school again. He made a friend named Marcus and started drawing pictures of pancakes in art class. JC began tutoring sessions to catch up on the reading she'd missed. One day, she found an old journal in the community center library and began to write. About the bench. The blanket. The sandwiches. And the man who saw them. 3 months passed. Then one morning, as the sun lit up the world like a new page, Malachi arrived at the center with a small box under his arm. Inside was a key. This place down the street, he said, holding out the key. It's not much. But it's got 2 bedrooms. And Darlene worked some magic with her connections. Said if you're ready, it's yours. JC stared. You mean, like a home? He smiled. Like a home. The first night in their new apartment, JC stood in the middle of the room, hands to her face, and cried. Not from fear. Not from hunger. But from something so unfamiliar it felt like a stranger, safety. Cody ran through the rooms, laughing, shouting, this is our house. The walls were bare. The kitchen was tiny. The furniture was donated. But it was theirs. Malachi didn't stay long. He dropped off a few groceries, handed JC a second key, and said, "You got this now." "You're not leaving, are you?" Cody asked. "Never," Malachi said. "Just giving you space to grow." Months turned into a year. JC joined the school newspaper. Cody made honor roll. Their story, two kids forgotten by the world, found by a stranger who expected nothing in return, spread quietly through the community. And one day, a reporter showed up at the center, asking to meet Malachi. He didn't want fame. But he agreed to tell the story, not for himself, but to remind the world that sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can save a life. And maybe, just maybe, change too.